Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and today I'm sharing a project as part of Kylie Bertucci's International Blog Hop winners. So you very kindly voted for my card that I shared before, the Flowering Tulips pop-up card, and as a result I get to join in with 9 other demonstrators from across the world to share some creative inspiration. So as my first card was using the Flowering Tulips, I thought I'd do the same. So here's my card, as you can see here, and the little extra wow is it's a thank you card, that was the theme, but is that you pop up this lovely spread of tulips, as you can see here. So that's the fun card. On this one I've used a couple of stamp sets and a couple of sets of dies. So I've used the Flowering Tulips and coordinating dies for the front here, and the inside is using the lovely flowering rain boots with these super tulip bunches, sort of clumps I suppose they are, and then what I've used for dies here is the basic borders die. So that's this lovely cloud one. As you can see here, super, you've got sort of 6 different dies that give lovely edges, so I'm going to use this cloud one to start with as well. So quite a bit of die cutting with this. Obviously if you haven't got the dies you could fussy cut, and on this one I've actually used obviously Calypso Coral and picked up the colour Petal Pink even and Calypso Coral, but I've picked up the colours in the Flowering Tulips, Flowering Fields Designer Series paper, and I've used some of the lovely in colour 6x6 DSP packs for the front there. So I thought I'd do something similar, but because we're coming towards the end of celebration, I thought let's get using some of the using up some of that free DSP that we've got. So I'm going to use the Simply Marvellous, lovely colours in here. As you can see, we've got super pinks in there, but I thought I'd go a little bit bolder, and instead of going with those I thought I'd go with the Highland Heather kind of gorgeous grape piece of paper. So I'm going to use that, and again I'm going to use the DSP in colour stack as well. So I thought I'd just get some die cutting and stamping done first. For that border on the inside there, I've used a piece that's about 10 by 10 centimetres. Doesn't have to be too precise, and I'm just going to run that through to create a nice piece to go in the middle there. Really easy to use these border dies. You don't have to be too precise, and yeah, they just cut so beautifully. What we will want to do, as I said, is there we go, create our nice panel. So that's just going to fit in there, and I can then trim that down to size. In fact, gosh, I've done that one almost identical. Who'd have thought? So there we go. So that's our first bit. We can use our scrap for a bit of stamping. So let's get going. Now, while I was preparing this, I thought if I'm going to go for the gorgeous grape and the Highland Heather, then let's get those. They always work well together. But I thought, you know what, there's some lovely DSP here, and while I was stamping I stamped on this as well. So I'm going to stamp on this and then make a decision about whether to use the stamped on DSP pieces, or whether I'm going to use my stamped on basic white. So here's my Simply Marvellous and a couple of scraps of paper. So colours I'm using, in addition for the leaves, I'm just using Pear Pizzazz as well. So you're going to want to repeat stamp some of these images. So I actually did 3 of these little clumps, and in the Flowering Rain Boots there is a lovely die that cuts that out. And again, I have a little pack that just I keep all my scraps in. When I'm lining this up, I tend to line up this little pointy leaf and that long stem. A little bit of tape just to keep that aligned while it goes through my die cutting machine. I'm obviously going to stamp some leaves, again in the Pear Pizzazz. So I stamped, I'm going to stamp a large and a small. We'll probably want, and then we'll be stamping some of those direct to the paper. So again, with the Flowering Tulips, we've got a leaf die for each of those. So this lovely big leaf here, just line that up, and then my small leaf, I've just left, you can see, enough gap so that I can actually pop those through as well. So those are my 2 leaves for the front of my card. I've actually used the scalloped contours for this piece here. I tend to have quite a few of those already cut because they're a great size for a focal image. So I shall grab one of those from my stash. And let's have a look at how these tulips look in Gorgeous Grape. So I'm going for the darker colour here, and we're just going to pop those straight on. Okay, those look absolutely beautiful. What I did with the others to get that sort of variegated effect, which won't surprise you because I've done this lots of times before, is I'm going to stamp, ink up rather, in Highland Heather. Then I'm going to grab a sponge dauber and just ink up the edges of those tulips with a bit of Gorgeous Grape. So you'll see you get even more shading on those. So we'll give that a go. Again, that's one of the Flowering Rain Boots dies, and this just shows the fabulous coordination that, you know, this stamp set, Flowering Rain Boots, works really well with our with the flowering tulips. A bit of a this goes with that. Okay, and obviously I'll die cut that as well. And then we want to do our flowers. So if we think about it again, I just grab myself a little bit of basic white. Okay, so with these, they do layer up photopolymer, so I'm just going to stamp in Gorgeous Grape, and then going to use this sort of like almost like a heart-shaped one, and add some detail in Highland Heather. And I rather like to just add a little bit extra in the sides there as well. The other flower is this sort of bud one, again outline in Gorgeous Grape, and then the sort of smaller bud in Highland Heather just in the centre there. And then just pop your die over the top. And with these, what I always say, you know, just sort of look until it looks even. You can see through there, like so. Okay, so that's going over to be die cut. So now what I want to do is stamp our focal image onto the front. So I'm going to keep out my ink pads for these, and I'm going to grab my contour scallops piece as well, like that. So I'm going to want the stem. I'm also going to want my 2 leaves as well. So let's get started. So what I actually done is I decided to stamp my flowers first of all. So I'm going to go for my Gorgeous Grape, just in the top corner here. I'm then going to go for my bud one, and then I'm going to go again with my larger one just at the bottom. And having done that, that enables me to come in and do my stems. So this one, I'm actually turning the stem upside down and just lining that up with the bottom of the flower. The bud, I'm just going to pop that there, and then my final one at the bottom. And then I'm going to come in and stamp some leaves. Probably use the larger one on the left hand side there and just build up that pattern. I'm probably going to pop a smaller one in there. Because this bottom bit is going to be covered up by our sentiment, which I, of course, haven't stamped yet. She suddenly realises. Right, so having done that, I'm going to use my infill stamps now. So I'm going to pop my my Gorgeous Grape away. fact, let's just, before I do that, I'm going to stamp my sentiment because I'm going to want that in a moment. So I'm just stamping the sentiment in Gorgeous Grape. So now I've stamped my sentiment, I can get on and finish my flowers. Now these obviously you could leave this just as it is. If you haven't got the dies, then it would work. Wrong one. Flower, this one. Okay, so this is my heart-shaped one. And I remember that because it's got that sort of heart shape in the middle there. It just adds so much dimension in there. So pop that to one side, and then to say I'm going to use some extra ones to add some dimension, as you can see here, by popping those up. So pop the ink pads away, and let's cut this ready for a bit of fussy cutting and get some die cutting done. So now I've done lots of die cutting, so I've got some lovely leaves in Pear Pizzazz which I can add on. I've got my extra flowers to go on the top, so you want, as I said, 2 of those larger ones and 1 of the smaller one, which I have there. And as I say, just sort of, as many leaves as you would like, really. So what I'm going to do now is take my bone folder and just shape those slightly. And I'm kind of cutting diagonally on those, just to give them a little bit of a sort of twist. And we're obviously going to want some of our dimensionals for this as well. And I'm going to use a bit of wet glue too. And I'm going to do some shaping with my flowers as well. So just take your bone folder, and I'm just going from side to side on those. And then when you turn, so it's whether I want to use those or whether I want to use the ones from the DSP. Okay. Do you know what? I actually think I'm going to use these ones from the DSP because I rather like the white against the white on those ones. But I think maybe for the inside, these tulips might work because they look rather lovely stamped on there. So let's go for it. So let's go for the white ones on the outside. So what you want to do is pop a dimensional in the middle at the top of each of these flowers. And with the leaves, again, you're going to want dimensional at the top of the leaves. And the mini dimensionals really come into their own on these. Like so. And then on the bottom, I'm just going to put a bit of Tombow. So then we can pop, and by stamping them, obviously it helps us with our positioning, but it also means that when you look sort of down, you can see just a little bit of the flower behind as well. So just press your finger on that bit where the Tombow is to help that adhere. But it just gives a little bit more shape and dimension to those. It makes it look sort of just slightly more realistic, I think. Go. So press those down, and then let's do the same with our leaves. That might have been better. I might use a smaller leaf on that one. Yes, I think that's going to fit in better. So just a little adhesive on the bottom. There we go. Just sometimes it's just sort of get you sort of look at it and think, yeah, it's not quite right. Usually when I'm trying to glue it down, of course. I think probably again. There we go. Yeah, I think actually I probably want a smaller one. Have I got another smaller one handy? There we go. Yes, here's a smaller leaf. Right, I've got Just think that's going to give it a better scale. Helps if you take the lid off the glue, doesn't it? There we go. Okay. So there's our front panel. And now what we want to do is do a little bit of fussy cutting. Now this is entirely optional. Obviously, some people just don't like fussy cutting, and that's fine. Obviously you could then just die cut this if you wanted to. And all I'm doing is just holding my scissors and turning the paper on the hole. There we go. And I'm just coming round the outside edge of this. And you can go in and go in a little bit closer if you want to. Make those flourishes a little bit more detailed, but you can just come round the outside. And obviously I'm doing it quite quickly here. I'm just going to come round a little bit more on my flourish on that edge. And then just come in those snips and do the same on this little bit of the flourish here, just to bring that in a little bit neater. So there we have our lovely thank you, and by keeping those flourishes you can obviously just add dimensional onto the back there. Mini dimensional is perfect for this. And just pop that on that bottom corner for our thank you. So that's our front panel done. Let's crack on with the actual card mechanism itself. What I want to do is actually create our pop-up mechanism. I've deliberately left a bit of card longer than I need it. You want it about 13.5 centimetres. It doesn't have to be precise. So 13.5 is around about 5.25 inches. And then I'm going to turn that and actually score it at 1 centimetre. I'm going to move it across to 2.5 and then cut. And that's why I left it bigger, because it's just easier to score than trying to score on a narrow skinny piece. And then just score that at 8.5. And this is where this really is a very simple mechanism for a pop-up, but very effective. Fold it in half and trim those corners, and that just takes the bulk, particularly on the centre, away from that. And then obviously that's our pop-up that we're going to attach our tulips to. So here are my tulips. So as I say, we've got tulips with just stamped and tulips on white. I'm going to go for the ones on the DSP. I think that just adds a little bit more. So I'm actually going to grab, I've got 3 of those, so that I think will work well. I just need my extra one. Okay. And so what we want to do is attach those tulips to the top of the flowers stems. So I'm going to turn all those over, and what I'm actually going to do is pop the glue on the top of these, and I'm just dabbing with a fine tip glue on the top of those stems. Because what you don't want is lots of glue kind of oozing out everywhere. So this is starting to get a little bit tacky. Okay, so once I've done that, while they're face down, I'm just going to pop those on the back there and glue them to my hand. Okay, I'm not going to do that. There we go. Attach it on the front. Here we go. And you'll just see where that overlaps. I'm going to do that with all of those. Just pop those in there. So this long one is the one that I'm lining up because that's the one that I know is going to go to that taller flower. And obviously using the wet glue gives us a little bit of wiggle room. And the final one that I decided to try and stick to myself. So while those are drying, we can just, we've done our die cutting, and I can show you how we layer up our card. So as I say, those are drying off. So our actual card is a standard card. So this is a standard, depending on whether you're in the US, obviously your dimensions are slightly different, but this is 21 by 14.5 scored at 10.5. And for the front, I've taken a piece of gorgeous grape and I've made that very slightly smaller. It is just 3 millimeters, and you'll see I've cut the middle out of that, gutted it. So I've got a piece to use for whatever I want later on. That's going to go on the front there. And then I've gone slightly smaller again with my DSP, you'll see here. So this is at 13.9 by 9.9. And you'll see I'm just putting the glue around the edge because that's where it's going to attach to the frame. Okay, just that narrow border. So this would be the equivalent of 1/8 of an inch. I'll put inch measurements on my blog for anybody who wants those, would prefer to have those. So now we're going to pop the inside, and again I thought I'd actually use some of my Simply Marvellous DSP, and again that's the slightly narrower than the card itself. I didn't want to make it the same size because I wanted to keep the bulk out of the centre of the card. So I've just gone for that tiny millimetre border. So again, this is 14.2 by 10.2. Just gives a very narrow border on there, but it's enough to keep that channel down the middle sort of clear. And also give us a tiny border as well. So here we go. I'm not going to stick this down just yet, but I'm just going to check that that is going to work, which it is. And now to create a little pop-up. So I've deliberately done it on Pear Pizzazz, and that's so that obviously it matches in with my flowers. So I'm just going to trim across the bottom here, and my flowers are going to go in here. And what you don't want with these is to actually add any extra dimension. So I'm not going to use dimensionals on these because it's going in the centre of the card. So I'm going to have one on the left here. I'm going to have one on the right. But what I'm going to do is just overlap that slightly. So again, just trim off the bottom there. So what you don't, just to make sure, you want your flowers to stay to the right hand side of that score line. So you see here, I'm just making sure that doesn't overlap there. Add the one on the left in exactly the same way. And then the question then is whether I just pop that over the top. I think, yeah, that should fit. I actually trimmed my other one, but I didn't need to in the end. So pop that in there as well. Now the next bit you really want, because this is a moving mechanism, you really want it to be strong. So I would recommend you use either our Seal Plus or you use some red tape. So what you want is to make sure that the glue comes right up to the edge of that. And depending how I'm actually going to use my red tape, I think. I've actually got a fine one here, just because it's easier for me. So this tape is going to go right up to that score line, like so. I'm just going to put a second piece just below that. Make sure it's really good. But obviously what you don't want is any glue eking out. because it will obviously stop the mechanism working, because it'll end up being glued to the back. So, yeah. Okay, so now this is going to be our pop-up, and you'll see this is going to fold up underneath. Oh. And the reason I put this on here is because what you want to do is make sure that it, where possible, it aligns with this. So I'm putting this down, I'm matching my score line and putting that right on the score line here. And as I put it down, I'm just making sure that these don't go outside the perimeter of my card. And then quite simply, and this is why I say it's a really simple pop-up to do, and move that out of the way now, I've used that to line it up. Take off that second piece, I'm folding that over and then folding my card over to pick it up. And it's as simple as that. Just need to add our panel on the front. Well, yes, we do need to add a panel on the front, and I need to put my panel on the inside. Just that the clouds just work really well as a fun way of doing it. Pop some dimensionals onto the back here. And obviously, because it's a larger piece, we can use our large dimensionals, or standard size dimensionals. Just keep it nice and supported. I've probably gone a bit mad actually on that, but there we go. There we go. The beauty of this card obviously is that it opens out flat afterwards as well. So whether they want it, if they've got limited space, they can keep it standing up, or if they've got lots of space, they can open it out and have that pop-up bouquet as a thank you. And obviously this would be perfect to go with a bouquet of tulips. So there we go, a pop-up flowering tulip card. Are you team Highland Heather or team Calypso Coral? Either way, I think it'd be wonderfully received by the recipient. As I say, that folds out flat and you've got a lovely card. Thanks for watching. Do click on the links below to visit the other hoppers as well, if you're on my blog. And if you're not on my blog and on YouTube, do click on the link and go and visit the other ones, because I'm sure you'll be inspired. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye bye.